Guys, we recently dropped a video on the top 5 things that I learned after finishing my first season in Stardew Valley. And since then, I've also been doing a lot of reflecting on the many tips that you guys gave to me that really helped me on my journey. Tips that I would love to hand down to new players that are potentially looking to start their Stardew journey as well. Because when you first start out in this game, it can be a bit overwhelming. And so I've compiled the list to the top 10 tips that really helped me get started as a first-time player in Stardew Valley, as presented by you, the community. Tip number 1, place your chests everywhere. And no, this isn't some kind of dirty joke, this is legit. When you first start your journey in Stardew Valley, you're given a few resources and some tools, and that's about it, and a backpack that holds about 12 items. But when you combine all your tools that you have, you really only are left with about 6 spots, which doesn't leave a lot of room for mining, fishing, or carrying any snacks. And so one of the first tips I ever got in Stardew Valley, and one that continues to be one of the most useful tips I've ever received in the game, was placing your chest everywhere. And one of the key places I was told to place my chest was outside the mines. And this was absolutely huge, as you spend a lot of time in the mines uncovering a lot of different secrets and gathering a lot of resources, and you need a place to store them. And while you likely won't get the first backpack upgrade, which costs about 2,000 gold, for a couple days after you start your new journey on the farm, having a place to store your valuable items in between floors is invaluable. And so what I would typically do when I would hit the mines is I would try to hit the first 5 levels, which allows you access to the elevator. And then I would essentially take everything that I got from those first 5 floors, go right back up to level 0 or level 1, and immediately store it all in my chest. This prevented me from having to go all the way to my farm to drop my items off, and allowed me to maximize my time early on. Now, after you get the backpack upgrade, you may not need this chest as much, but even after getting the backpack upgrade myself, I still find myself storing a lot of valuable items in this chest outside the mines. And the same goes for fishing. Whenever I would fish, I would store a chest right nearby that I could just immediately stockpile all the fish that I caught inside. Again, preventing you from having to go all the way to your farm and allowing you to just keep fishing. And this is incredibly important in the beginning of your journey, as it allows you to maximize the amount of money you're making with the little time that you have. And so as I reached the final days of spring, I continued to think about this tip as one of the most valuable things that I was ever told when I started. Because as someone that hates inventory management, starting out Stardew Valley with only a few extra spots to spare was an absolute nightmare. And so when I came up with this list, this was the first thing that I wanted to share with you guys who are starting out your journey as well. And I can't tell you enough, this is invaluable information. Number 2 on the list, turn on advanced crafting settings. Now, I think it's advanced crafting settings, or it might actually be advanced inventory settings or something, I don't know. But if you go into your options menu, there is a tab that is not checked off. It's advanced something. I believe it's advanced crafting settings. Whatever the name is, turn this on immediately, as it is going to provide you with invaluable information about how much of each item you can craft. Say goodbye to the days of guesswork and trying to do the math yourself, because let's be honest, math is hard. And say hello to the days of stress-free inventory management, as you will now have a system that counts and calculates for you to tell you exactly how many chests, trees, field snacks you can craft without you having to guess or figure it out. Now, I wanted to put this tip on the list because this was a tip that was handed to me on like the 25th day, and it's something that I wish I knew sooner. And again, this doesn't necessarily change the game in any massive way, but it is a quality of life improvement that I think just makes inventory management within the game so much easier. And I would say of all the tips on the list, this is the one that I wish I knew sooner. Tip number 3, keep one of everything. Now, this was a tip that I heard probably more than any other tip on this list. I feel like every video I would see a dozen comments about keeping one of everything. And this is incredibly important for my completionists out there that have a desire to complete the community center. And if you're one of those people that says that you're not doing the community center, you'd rather go with JojaMart, leave this video right now. We are no longer friends. I'm just kidding. Please stay. But in all seriousness, for my first time, I decided to go with the community center. I love completing things. I'm kind of a completionist at heart, and so this was right up my alley. And essentially, the concept of keeping one of everything allows you to ensure that when you unlock certain plaques within the community center, you might find that you actually do have a couple of those items that you need to fill potentially an entire bundle. And as someone that spent the early days of my time in my first season in the mines, I was discovering a lot of items that I didn't know what they did, but I had a feeling that they would be useful in some way at some point. And lo and behold, I unlocked new plaques within the community center that had the very items that I'd been hoarding. And it perfectly proves that it pays to hold on to things. Shout out to my hoarders out there. Now, for me personally, I didn't find this to be as useful when it came to gold and silver tiered items like fish and things like that, as once I reached the later days of the spring, I tended to just sell those items. However, if for some reason the only fish that you have is a gold carp, and you need a carp, you could always risk it and try to fish for one, or you can just use that gold starred one. And so I did find myself a few times going that route because I just didn't want to do the work to find a regular carp. But the sentiment remains, keep one of everything and you'll thank me later. Number 4, and you might think that this is a joke, but I'm being so serious, dig in everyone's trash around town. Listen, will you get caught occasionally? Of course. Will people judge you? Absolutely. But I can't tell you the amount of pure gold I have found in people's garbage, things that people are just willing to throw away. And as a wise man once said, one man's trash is another farmer's treasure. And in the early days of your time in Stardew Valley, you're playing for survival. And so I implore you, dig in the trash, take that chocolate cake. And in all seriousness, I found some genuinely great items that I'd never discovered before with some serious energy and health boost in people's trash. So don't be like me and wait till halfway through the season, dig in people's trash, and do it early. And speaking of snacks, this brings me to number 5. Have snacks at all times, especially for the mines. I can't tell you the number of times I forgot to prep snacks on my way to do a bout of fishing or even hit the mines, and the number of runs that were cut short due to the fact that I didn't prepare, I can't even count on 2 hands. And that is why I'm sharing that lesson with you in this video. Bring snacks with you at all times. And one of the earliest snacks that's pretty easy to make and doesn't really require a lot are the field snacks. Now don't ask me how I got access to them. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure it had something to do with an upgrade for either foraging or farming, but nonetheless, I got it pretty early on in my time playing Stardew Valley, and they actually ended up being a lifesaver through a number of events. And so until you get access to crafting recipes and things like that, the field snacks are actually your go-to source for energy and health early on. And it really just requires you to scavenge for acorns and a few other common resources around your farm. But again, if you plan on hitting the mines or even fishing early on, having field snacks is incredibly useful, or really just any snacks at all. Just don't be like me. Bring some snacks. And number 6 on this list, don't ask out Haley. Seriously, don't. But all jokes aside, what I mean from this tip is to give gifts to people as often and as early as possible. Believe me, just do it. You will save yourself an incredible amount of emotional turmoil later by giving gifts to people and just building those relationships. Which, if I'm being honest, is something that I didn't really focus on in my early days, or really just the entire spring season. I was too busy planting crops, fishing, and trying to hit level 50 in the mines. And due to my overzealous, goal-oriented self, I really ended up sacrificing building those personal relationships early on. Relationships that might have saved me a little bit of embarrassment later on. I won't spoil it for you. That's all I'll say. It needed to be said, so here it is. But no, seriously, don't ask out Haley. And number 7 on the list, pass out frequently. There's nothing that spells a hard day's work than passing out right in front of your porch just as you're about to jump into bed. And although the time in which you're supposed to be in bed is by 2 a.m. every day, I said, bump that, I'm staying up late. But no, seriously, don't be like me. There were so many times where my Twitch chat tried so hard to save me, reminding me that, hey, it's almost 2 a.m., you might want to go to bed. And the reason this tip is on this list is because almost every time I did not listen. And in case you didn't already know this, not going to bed by 2 a.m. means you pass out, which means that you start your next day with about half the energy that you had the day before. And in the early days, starting out your day with 50% energy is a serious loss. And so as previously mentioned, don't be like me, make sure you keep an eye on the time, or else your Twitch chat, friends, or family will never let you forget it. Number 8 on this list, and a tip that I find to be the gold standard, check your calendar daily. Now, this is something that I forgot to do during my first spring that I think would have helped me a lot in terms of planning, but the calendar really does give you a lot of key details about what's going on in the town throughout that month. From birthdays to celebrations to festivals, there is a lot of useful information that's worth noting. And occasionally, some of these events affected whether or not shops were even open, like the Egg Festival. And there were times where I was planning on doing a particular activity, realized that it was the Egg Festival, which I could have and should have planned for, and then ended up having to readjust. And so I think it's really important to check out the calendar every day just to keep track on things and ensure that you're building those relationships, making friends, giving people gifts, and just knowing what's coming up within that given week. Number 9 on this list, invest in parsnips and fish to make the most money. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first started playing Stardew Valley, money was super tight for me, and I was really struggling to figure out how to make it. But then some truly great folks within the community rallied together and gave me this piece of information to invest in parsnips and fish every day. In fact, I would say that if you're starting out in Stardew Valley for the first time, I would almost spend that first week just fishing. Well, fishing and crops. Now, why do I say parsnips, you ask? Well, parsnips are pretty inexpensive, especially early on when you don't have a lot of money, and they sell for a decent amount, as well as the fact that they don't take a lot of days to grow. Now, another crop that I would recommend spending money in early is potentially potatoes, because you can sometimes yield more than you plant, with some potatoes having the possibility of yielding 2 and sometimes 3 potatoes, as well as selling for a decent amount. But in the beginning, you don't have that much money for that many potatoes, so parsnips for me were the way to go. They don't cost a lot, they produce money for you within a couple days, it's a win-win. And when it comes to fishing, really all you need is a fishing rod, which you get within your first couple days, and after that, you're essentially off to the races, making money for every fish that you catch. And so within the first couple days of my time in Stardew Valley, I would tend to spend the mornings tending to my farm, tending to my crops, and then I would spend the rest of the day tending to just fishing. And that resulted in me having just enough money to really get things going. So if you're looking to make money early in Stardew Valley in order to get the backpack and things like that, I highly recommend fishing daily and investing in parsnips. Low cost, high reward. Number 10 on this list, and I will say I'm a bit biased, but you want to befriend Linus. He's lonely and he deserves love. Now, if you don't know who Linus is, refer back to tip number 4. I promise you'll run into him doing that. But there's a lovely man who lives just outside Pelican Town in a tent, and he lives all by himself. And at first, he doesn't seem that open to communication, but if you really push him, eventually, he'll warm up to you. And the conversations, the warmth, the kindness that Linus has shown me during my first time in Stardew Valley is unparalleled to anyone else I met. And so while I may be biased, I wanted to put this on the list because I think Linus deserves every ounce of love that he gets. And finally, number 11, and what I consider to be the most important tip on this list, have fun and work at your own pace. When I first began my journey in Stardew Valley, I was trying to optimize. I wanted to find the best way to do everything in the best fashion. And the lovely Stardew community made me realize that this game isn't a race. It's not about doing things the fastest or the most optimal way. It's about doing things your way. And this advice has stuck with me through about every encounter, every day, as I've enjoyed my first 28 days in Stardew Valley. And so I wanted to offer it to you as well, as I think it's a really important way to really understand what Stardew Valley at its core is all about. This isn't a game about trying to race to the finish or do everything in the most optimal way. It's a game about relaxation. It's a game about separating yourself from the demands of the everyday and enjoying a new life and new start. And I found myself throughout my time really investing in my character and the world and building out this own backstory that I could appreciate, versus trying to find out what could produce me the most money and the most crops in the best way. And one of the things that I was often told is that anything that you miss in Stardew Valley will come back around at some point. So if for some reason you don't complete everything for the spring in the community center, or perhaps you didn't complete an objective that you wanted to, maybe you didn't catch a particular fish, that's okay. It'll come back around. And I feel like that little tip really took the pressure off this game for me, as it allowed me to really just embrace every day and take it as it comes. Now I find myself truly enjoying every day in Stardew Valley and really just not going into it with any particular plan and really just trying to enjoy my time. And it has been an absolute game changer for my overall first time Stardew experience. And ladies and gentlemen, that is it, your top 11 tips. These are just a few of the tips that were given to me by some of the loveliest folks I've ever had the pleasure of meeting as a first-time Stardew player. And tips that I hope will help you on your first-time journey on the farm. No matter which farm you pick or what you choose to do every day, take it as it comes, enjoy the ride, and have fun. But I hope that at the end of the day, some of these tips resonate with you, maybe bring you a bit of nostalgia for your first time experience, or if you're a first time player, maybe they'll help you find the best way to enjoy your time on the farm, as they did for me. Now, what I would love to hear is your first time experience. What was one of the best tips that you were given when you began your journey in Stardew Valley? Drop them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, you want to support the channel, support me, a great free way to do so is to drop a like on this video, subscribe if you're new here, and you enjoy cozy commentary for your viewing pleasure. This was a really fun video for me to make, and if you enjoyed it, any support you can show would really help me out. And if you have any feedback for this kind of video, let me know that as well. I'm always looking to improve, and any sort of feedback is good feedback. Anyway, that's all for me. Hopefully these tips have found their way to someone who finds them useful, just as they did for me. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and remember, keep it cozy.